Hey guys, it's NCB Bryce Gallo here, otherwise known as Chess UC Online. So today I wanted to shed a little bit of light into the 7 most common mistakes, in my opinion, that are made at the beginning chess level. Through my years of playing chess, I have seen a lot of mistakes, and several of these mistakes are actually mistakes that I started off making when I was a new player, but as I progressed up the rating ladder, I started to realize, wait a second, this doesn't really make any sense. Why am I doing this? It always goes really, really badly for me every time I play this kind of a move, or every time I think this way, suddenly something really bad happens. And so over my time of playing chess, I started to notice patterns. And these patterns really just help me become a better chess player. And these are things that you'll start to acquire just as you play chess more and more. These patterns will start to jump off the board at you, and then pretty soon you'll, whether or not you realize it at the beginning, you'll stop making these mistakes. But to save you a lot of time, I've compiled this list of 7 mistakes that are commonly made at the beginning chess level that I would like to share with you. Before we get started, please leave a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below for more videos like this every single day. Let's start talking a little bit about the first mistake. Among beginning chess players, this mistake just runs rampant. It's all over the place. But the good news is that it is extremely easy to fix. The first mistake that I see at the beginning chess levels is players moving their H and their A pawns, which are the pawns on the far sides of the board, forward 2 squares. Sometimes they'll play, let's say, the A pawn forward 2 squares on their right hand side, and then they'll play the H pawn forward 2 squares on their left hand side the very next move. The idea behind this is a good one. The rooks are very powerful. Once players learn how to play the game, they realize the rooks, they can move across the entire board. So logically, I should be moving these pieces out as soon as I can so that my artillery's out right at the start of the fight and I can knock out my opponent. The flaw with this idea is that in chess, you want to control the center of the board. Controlling the center of the board is very important, and therefore you should be moving your king and your queen pawns forward 2 squares at the start of the game. The other problem with moving the rooks out, and hence moving the H or the A pawns out first, is that the rooks, when there's a lot of pieces on the board, they can't actually go very many places. They are long-range pieces, yes, they are very powerful, yes, but the problem is they can't really move around if lots of pieces are cluttered all over the board. So in order to correct this mistake, move your king and your queen pawns, which are your E and your D pawns. Those are the 2 pawns that you want to be moving first, and then just forget about the H or the A pawns. Mistake number 2 is not fighting for the center of the board at the start of the game. Now, this is, again, a very common mistake. You have to control the center 4 squares. The center 4 squares are found right in the center of the chessboard, and those are sometimes referred to as the golden squares. And the reason why they're called this is because the person who controls the golden squares is typically the person who has better attacking chances, and they typically end up doing a lot better in the game. When you control the center of the board, that means that your pieces are spread out. You have lots of room to maneuver your pieces all around, and it's much easier for you to set up an attack on your opponent if you control the center squares of the board. Mistake number 3 is another mistake that I see almost every single day that I'm playing chess. I will see this mistake being made, and that mistake is resigning early. It just blows my mind how many times players will resign a game when they're not even in a losing position. Just because you make a mistake does not mean it's a good idea to resign the game. If you made a mistake and you just resign the game, you give yourself a 100% chance of losing that game. It sounds silly, but it's true. If you don't resign, your chances of actually coming back in the game, the chances of your opponent making a big mistake and you're able to checkmate them, you increase the odds of you winning the game if you just don't resign. I don't care if you lost your queen and both your rooks. Keep playing the game. Not only do you increase your odds of winning the game, even if you are desperately down in material, but you also get more chess experience. Learning to fight against your opponents when you're down, when you're losing, is a very, very important skill that you will need as you climb up the rating ladder. If you keep playing chess, even when you're down, even when you're losing, you're getting valuable experience. There have been times where I have been so badly down in material, my position is shattered, my king is under attack in a million different directions, my opponent's just coming in really fast, they're crushing all of my defenses that are remaining, and I just kept fighting on. Of course I could have resigned, but in some of these moments, I have actually learned brand new attacking ideas that I had never thought of, I had never seen before. What I learned from that game, from losing, has been so valuable to me. I have learned these seemingly complicated checkmate techniques that actually work, that I never thought could even work. And I see my opponent checkmate me in a certain way, and I'm thinking, wow, that's actually really smart. That was a brilliant way to checkmate. I think I'll use that. There have been times where I've been able to use different checkmating patterns against other people, and the only reason I knew those existed was because I kept playing in a completely lost position, and I got to see how my opponent finished the game. That is just a wonderful reason why you should never resign. You're probably going to learn things that you never would have known before had you not played on. Mistake number 4, another easy mistake to fix, but you see it all of the time at beginner rating levels. And this mistake is developing your knights to the sides of the board. If you look at a chessboard, when you move a knight to the side of the board, especially in the opening of the game, your knight has 2 squares that he can move to. But when you develop your knight towards the center of the board at the beginning of your game, the knight has 4 squares that he is covering or he is attacking. It should be pretty obvious why covering 4 squares is better than your knight covering 2 squares. Your knight's doing more work for fewer amounts of moves on your part. For this reason, I would implore you to always develop your knights towards the center of the board. There's very, very few times where you would ever want to develop the knight to the side of the board in the opening of the game. Later on in the game, there are times where it is permissible to move your knight to the side of the board, perhaps to reroute your knight to a new spot, but generally speaking, in most of your chess games, developing your knights and keeping your knights in the center of the board is going to be more effective for you, simply because the knight covers more ground and is able to do more work for you than if you sidelined him and he's only got a couple squares he can move to. That's not very helpful. Mistake number 5 is this idea that when you're in doubt about what to play, move a pawn. Now, moving a pawn when you are in doubt of something is not a good idea because pawns can only move forward. Pawns can only move forward, meaning you can never undo a pawn move. Pawn moves are permanent, and so therefore, pawn moves should be the moves that you should actually spend the most amount of time considering, because once you move that pawn, you can't move it back. When you move a pawn, you are committing to something that you can never back down on in a chess game. So when in doubt, I would recommend that you should really think about what are the consequences of moving this pawn forward. What squares am I no longer defending? How can my opponent break into my defenses? Am I creating any weaknesses in my position by moving this pawn forward? So instead of moving a pawn when you don't know what to play, and this is something that I usually do, when I have no idea what to play, my position looks fine, or the position is locked up and I can't see any good move that can get anywhere, what I do is I just focus on where my pieces are right now, and I think to myself, what can I play that will do something to help me? No matter how small, what is a move that you could play that will do something to help you? Can you move a piece to a position where it covers more squares? Can you move a piece to defend more of your weaknesses that you have in your position? Can you work towards gaining control of the center? Or perhaps can you develop your minor pieces? Have you castled yet? If you haven't castled, you should probably castle, assuming it's safe. These are all good things that you can do that are helping to promote your position. So when in doubt, I would suggest improve your weaknesses in your position maneuver your pieces to better spots, or start building up some kind of potential attack. These are some good ideas, just general good ideas that you should be going for when you don't know what to do. Mistake number 6 that I see quite often at the beginning levels of chess is developing your queen too early. So again, this kind of relates back to mistake number 1, where the beginning players, you want to move out your rooks because they are very powerful pieces. That's true, but you make those valuable pieces targets right off the bat if you bring them out and into the attack. So your rooks and your queen you should generally save until a little bit later in the game. The end of the opening or towards the early middle game, that is where you should probably be thinking about bringing those pieces out. So in the beginning of the game, you should be fighting for control of the center, you should be developing your minor pieces, and you should be castling. The queen can't do very much right off the bat of the game when all the pieces are out there. All of the pieces are covering so many different squares. The chances of you losing your queen by just moving her out into the game is very, very high. Your opponent might attack your piece, but you don't even notice it, and suddenly you just lost your queen, and it's only move 10. You don't want to lose your queen early on in the game because that is a devastating loss. But then again, don't resign just because you lost your queen. Keep fighting. And finally, mistake number 7. The last mistake is developing rooks before minor pieces. So this kind of harps back to point number 1. Beginning chess players, they often want to develop their rooks early because they are valuable pieces and they want to get their most valuable pieces into the battle to destroy their enemy. The only problem is that there's a whole lot of pawns out there. You have bishops, you have knights. All of these pieces are worth less than a rook, and therefore all of those pieces are likely going to be attacking your rooks early on as soon as your rooks develop. So rooks are best suited for late in the game. I suggest always to leave your rooks on the back rank until you have developed all of your pieces, you have fought for the center, you've castled, and you've moved your queen. Once you've done all of those things, a good idea, generally speaking, again, all of these different rules, they can vary depending on the kind of position that you have in your game, but generally speaking, you want to bring your rooks to the center of the board. That would be the D and the E files. That is when you should be developing your rooks, which is last. You don't want to develop your rooks early, you want to save them for the end. Rooks are the most powerful in the end game, and therefore they have to survive to the end game. If they can't survive to the end game, then they're not much good to you, unless you get a good trade for them. Hopefully these 7 mistakes commonly found at the beginning chess level will help you to become a stronger chess player. These are just the 7 most common mistakes that I've seen in my personal experience through playing chess. Some of these are mistakes that I have made in the past. Some of them are just mistakes I've seen other people make, and I just wanted to share this with you guys, and hopefully you found it useful. If you did, please leave a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to my YouTube channel down below, and leave a comment letting me know if you have any other questions about chess that you would like me to cover in a similar style video to this one. Thank you so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.